All right, my name is Dennis Gill with the Americans in Wartime Experience. Today's date is 3 June 2023. I'm in Reading, Pennsylvania at the World War II weekend. I'm speaking with Lou Cinfici.
Correct.
Got that right, okay.
You got that.
Perfect. So if you could just give us a little bit of background, where were you born, where'd you grow up, go to school?
Okay, I was born in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I went to school. I wasn't a very good student when I was a kid, and I was a troublemaker. And so I quit school when I was 16. And at 16, I just bummed around not knowing what I wanted to do. And I used to go to the pool rooms and shoot pool for money. And finally one day my brother offered, I said, "What are you going to do with your life?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, why don't you go join the Navy?" I said, well, prior to that, in 1944, I had 5 brothers in the service.
Okay.
And I wanted to go in the military, and I went and joined the Navy. They wouldn't take me, said, "You're too young." But I heard about the Merchant Marine. And I asked the people, I said, "What's the story in this Merchant Marine?" And they told me that they take people at 16. I said, "That's great." I said, "How do I get to join the Merchant Marine?" They said, "You have to go to New York." So what I did is, a bunch of us used to go to Coney Island. And I said to my mom, I said, I'm going to Coney Island with the gang, and we're going to be there for a couple of days. She said, "Okay, but stay out of trouble." So I got to New York, and I asked where the recruiting office was. And I finally found it, and I went in, and I told them I would like to join. And they said, "Okay, fill these papers out." And I filled them out. They said, "Have a seat over there." And then my name was called to go in. They gave me a physical, and then they gave me back my papers. They said, "Here, take these papers home and have your parents sign them, and then bring them back." I said, "Okay." So I took the lift paper they gave me, and I went out there, went to the station, got on the train, headed back to Reading, and I realized my parents are never going to sign these papers. And I got off the train, crossed the tracks, caught another train back to New York. And when I got back to New York, went over to the recruiting office, and I handed them the papers that I filled out. It's "Okay, have a seat over there." Next thing I know, I'm at Sheepshead Bay, and I was training. So I was at Sheepshead Bay for 11 weeks.
In the Merchant Marine? In
the Merchant Marine, yeah. And then finally when I graduated, they said there's a ship at a certain pier. You go down and get aboard that ship. So I went down to the pier, and I see this ship. It was it was a tugboat. And I said, "Oh my God," I said, "I'm going to be stationed here in New York. That's going to be great. Now I could go home every weekend." Then when I went aboard the ship, the engineer says, I had to go under my Italian name. They changed everything. They said, "You have to go under your Italian name." So I went over and say, and the chief engineer looked at my papers. He said, "Oh, Luigi, welcome aboard the ship." I said, "Is this the ship I'm going to be on?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What about those other 2 ships?" He said, "No, you're assigned to this one." I said, "Okay." He said, "You're going to work in the engine room." I said, "Oh, that's great." And then we got to shooting the baloney, and I says, what is the purpose of the ship?" I said, "Are we going to stay here in New York, and are we going to be pushing ships around and put them in the harbor and take them out and stuff?" He said, "No, this ship is going to be assigned to the Pacific." But prior to us getting to the Pacific, there was a ship that just had gone out in New York Harbor, and the Germans torpedoed it. Excuse me, and it was sinking. So we was a seagoing tugboat, and they assigned us to go out to the ship and try to salvage as much as we could and save as many lives. So I think we saved about 12 guys that were on that ship. And then we also tried to get as much supplies off it as we could and back into the harbor. And then about a week later, we get orders to go to the Pacific. So when I get to Panama, I wrote a letter to my parents and said, "I'm in the Merchant Marine, I'm having a safe time, don't worry about me, we're going to the Pacific." I said, "I'll get to see my brother Joe, who was at Pearl Harbor when they bombed." And then we went into the Pacific. So we stopped at Hawaii and then to some of the islands. And then as we got to some of the islands, we picked up three barges loaded with supplies. And our orders were to deliver these supplies to the islands. And the captain had all the orders where we were supposed to go. And this island, and then this island. We went to Wake, we went to Guadalcanal, we went to Marshall Islands, we went to the Philippines. And as we were going to these islands, we would drop these supplies off. And then when our supplies were all empty, then all we had to do was find a Liberty ship. And a Liberty ship would have 3 more barges loaded with stuff. We would pick that stuff up and then head back to another island, drop stuff off and off and off. So we did that to almost the end of the war. And then we finally got orders to go to Australia. They said Australia, the Japanese were going to invade Australia. And we had 3 barges loaded with supplies. So we're going to go to Australia to help our troops. It took us a day or maybe a day and a half to catch up to the convoy. We get into the convoy and then the radio officer passed the word over the PA system that they dropped some kind of a bomb in Nagasaki. And then he said there might be a possibility that the Japanese might surrender. So then the next day, I think it was, they apparently dropped another bomb. And our officer said to us, they dropped another bomb, Japan's going to surrender. So we left the convoy and then headed to Tokyo Bay. And as we were entering Tokyo, I'd never seen so many ships in my life. Oh my God, you can almost jump from one ship to another. And then we anchored right behind the Missouri. This big, beautiful ship. At first I didn't know it was the Missouri until they told me. They said that's the USS Missouri. Then we see a lot of activity going on. Ships, all kinds of boats coming in from the shore. Because we're pretty close to the land. And all these ships are coming to the Missouri. A lot of activity going on. Sailors hanging all over the ship. And I said to the our information officer, I said, what's going on that ship? I said, there's a lot of activity. He said, they're going to sign the peace treaty on there. I said, oh my God, that's really fantastic. Now we're right behind the Missouri. And I said to the captain, I said, can I climb the mast and look down on the fantail of the Missouri? Because we were way below the Missouri, but our mast was high. And he says, Luigi, he says, you can go up there, but be very careful. I said, yes, sir. So I climbed the mast, and all of these Japanese were, all the officers lined up, and all the crew was hanging around, and I was watching them sign the peace treaty. And there was MacArthur standing there. And as they were signing it, he was, then he would shake their heads. Then the next Japanese would come up and sign it. Then another Japanese come up and sign it. And then I was my arms are getting tired of hanging on to the mast. So I came back down and I said to the captain, I said, they're signing papers up there. He said, yeah, they're signing the peace treaty. The war's over. I said, oh my God, that's really wonderful. So about 3 days later, MacArthur says, you can go into the piers, tie yourself up to the dock, and you can go ashore. He said, but if you go ashore, now this is to everybody. And he was warning us that if you go ashore, do not wear your shoes in their homes. He said, if I catch anybody doing that, we're going to court-martial you. Well, we understood that it's their custom not to wear shoes in their homes. As soon as I got into Japan, as soon as we tied up, a day or so later, I was able to go on land. And when I got on land, I went down, there was like a little market there. And at this market, there was this young girl, Japanese girl, and apparently her mother, but I didn't know that they were together. But so I said to her, I says, hello, and she says, hello. And she spoke very good English. And I looked, and it really surprised me. I said, where do you learn to speak English like that? She said, in school. I said, how old are you? She said, I'm 16. I said, I'm 16, just turned 17. Then we got to shoot the baloney. She said, I want you to meet my mother. So her mother turns around and she's all scarred, really bad. And I said to her, I said, well, what happened to your mother? She said they lived in Nagasaki, and when they dropped that bomb, she was very lucky to get out of there just with the burns. And her whole body was burned. And then it was maybe 15, 20 minutes I was talking with them, and I didn't know whether I wanted to stay there with them or if they wanted me with them, but they were talking like, hey, buddy, stay with me and we'll shoot the baloney. So I says to the young girl, I said, well, where do you live now? They said, in Nagasaki. I said, where do you live now? She said, oh, in Tokyo. She said, but my mother wants to go to Nagasaki to see if anything is left of her home, and she wants to rebuild. She said, would you like to go along with us? I said, gee, I don't know. I suppose it would be a fantastic thing to go down to Nagasaki and see what the bomb did. So I asked the captain, I said, I met this young Japanese girl and her mother, and she lived in Nagasaki, and they would like to go down to Nagasaki to see if their home, if anything can be salvaged. He said, okay, Luigi, but I want you back in 5 days. I said, yes, sir. So it doesn't take the military very long to set up PXs and stuff like that. So I went over to PX and I bought a bunch, I think 5 cartons of cigarettes. And I figured because that apparently was good barter. Money was no good, but the cigarettes were like gold. So I took these 5 cartons of cigarettes, and I went to the young lady. She told me where she lived, and I found out. I got on a rickshaw, and he took me to their home, and I got on there, got to her house, and she was so happy to see me. And she said, what do you have there? I said, I have 5 cartons of cigarettes. She said, what do you want them for? I said, well, I understand you can use these to barter. She said, okay. So then she got a hold of a cab. She got a hold of a cab driver. And the cab driver came over, and she spoke to him in Japanese. And then she says to me, I asked the cab driver if he would drive us to Nagasaki. I said, well, that's great. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give him a carton of cigarettes if he takes us down there. Well, he wanted 2 cartons. So I said, okay, 2 cartons is okay. So I gave him 2 cartons. So now I have 3 cartons of cigarettes left. And he took us down to Nagasaki. And when I got there, I'd never in my life ever seen that town was totally destroyed. As far as the eye could see, nothing left, except to the right of the area that we were at, you could see a cement building, but that was partially destroyed too. Unbelievable. I said, 1 bomb did that. And she said, yeah, there was about 80,000 people killed from that 1 bomb. I said, you're kidding? She said, no. So she said, well, now we got to find where my mother lived. So it took us a couple of hours, and we finally found where she actually lived, and all this debris was there. And the Japanese were like little ants. They were thousands of them around there cleaning up. And they helped her mother clean this little area up. And we did find her house, and everything that was there was totally destroyed. If it was paper or anything, it was a plastic or something like that, it was all destroyed from the heat. And then we were there for 3 days. So I said, well, outside of Nagasaki there was a hotel. So I said, well, why don't we stay at the hotel? I'll give them a carton of cigarettes for rent. And then I said, I'll give them a carton of cigarettes for food. So now I'm down to 1 carton of cigarettes. So she said, okay, that's what we did. Then I used the other carton of cigarettes to give the people that was helping her clean up this mess. So I'm down to maybe 2 or 3 packs. And then eventually I said, hey, I gotta get back to the ship. I said, I can't stay in. We were there already 2.5 days. I said, the captain told me no more than 5 days. She said, well, you got a couple more days. I said, I don't want to take a chance. She said, okay. So then the cabbie, he was with us all the time. And so we jumped in the cab. We went to the hotel, got cleaned up, got our gear, and jumped in the cab and came back. And when I got back to the ship, nobody but there was a Japanese sitting at the ship. And I said to him, I said, "What are you doing on my ship?" He said, "This isn't your ship." I said, "What do you mean it's not my ship?" He said, "No." He said, "Go down and take a look in your locker. There's a letter down there." So I went in the kitchen, got a cup of coffee and a sandwich, and sat down. And this guy spoke really good English. I said, "Well, what's your job?" He said, "I'm an oiler." I said, "That's what I was." He said, "Those engines down there," he said, "are really nice and clean." I said, "We had to keep them clean." And then we got to talking a little bit. And then he said, "Go down and see what that note is on your locker." I said, "Oh," I said, "Okay." So I went down and I looked. And on the letter, it said that the crew was all going back to the United States, and they were at a certain pier on a certain ship. And if I wanted to go back to the States, I had to be there by the following morning at 10 o'clock. And I said, "Oh boy," but Fumio was her name, and she wanted me to stay. And she said, you Americans, you have a lot of money. We'll buy a piece of land and build a nice home." And in Tokyo, there was a big circle, and there was a huge piece of land there. And she said, "You could buy that piece of land very cheap." And I got to thinking about, oh my God, do I marry a Japanese girl? Or do I go back to the States? So it took me maybe 10 minutes to decide. I said, "Oh, I'm not staying in Japan. I'm going back to the States." So I told Fumio, I'm going to go back to the States. She said, "Okay." So I went back. I went back to the ship, and I told the guy, I said, "I'm going down to clean my locker up, but I'm going to stay overnight on the ship." I said, "But I want you guys to wake me up early so I can make this troop transport ship back to the States." They said, "Oh, no problem," because a whole bunch of them started to come aboard the ship. So they woke me up about maybe 4:30 in the morning. I got squared away, got packed my sea bag, and then I went up topside. They had breakfast and everything ready for it. I said, "Boy, you guys are living pretty good." The food was really good. It was all Japanese, rice and vegetables and stuff like that. I said, "Boy, that tasted pretty good." So then they managed to get a Jeep and take me down to the pier where the ship was. So when I got there, I see the gangway was still open. I climbed up the gangway. I got up and I asked, when I got to quarter deck, I said, "Is my name on the router to go back to the United States?" And they looked on the router, pulled the papers. "Yeah, there's your name." I said, "Oh, great." So they said, "Go over there and throw your sea bag over in that pile over there and just hang out with the gang." He said, "And then from there on, that's where you'll be living." I said, "Well, don't I get a bed or anything?" "No, there's no beds available," because there were thousands of troops on there. I said, "You mean I'd say I have to sleep on the deck?" He said, "That's what you're going to do until we get back to the United States." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I'm just happy to go back to the States." So we landed in Seattle. I have this Japanese rifle sticking out of my sea bag. We're on this elevator. Now, Uncle Sam is paying for our hotel, our food, and everything. And I'm on the elevator, and I hear this lady behind me complaining. What is he doing with a rifle? What is he doing with that weapon on this elevator? He should be on this elevator with that weapon. And she kept hounding me. And I looked back, and it was, maybe she was in her 30s, and kept really hounding. And I was really getting to a point where I didn't know what to do, and I thought to myself, if she says one more word, I'm going to turn around and smack her right in the mouth. And the guys that were on the same ship with me were on the elevator too. And they grabbed me by the arm and said, "We know what you're thinking, don't do it." So then finally the elevator opens up and we get off and we get our rooms. And then the next day they feed us and we get on this train and come back to back to Pennsylvania. Well, it took us almost 5 days to get back, but it was a nice train ride. We had to live, eat, drink, and everything on the same seat for 5 days, but it was nice. We all shot the baloney, we played cards and all that sort of stuff. But it took us, I think it was 5 days, and we finally got back to New York. Then I, you know, but the people were bad. Called me all kinds of names. Said you're a baby killer. You shoot women and all that sort of stuff. I said, no, I said, I didn't do any of that stuff. I said, if they have to blow up a village or something like that, I said, and they happen to be there, it's just an accident. So then I finally get home. My parents were happy to see me. I was happy to see the family. And life just went right on. And then I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I see a newspaper article that said that Dr. Bear and Dr. White wanted a technician, orthodontic technician, to work in the orthodontic lab, making orthodontic appliances with children. Well, I did some of that type of work in the Navy, and I thought, well, I'll go and apply for that. So I went and I applied for the job, and we got to talk, and I talked to the other guy that was working in the lab, and he asked me what I could do, and I told him what I could do and what I couldn't do and all that sort of. And they said, well, if you like the job is yours. So I said, okay, I'll take the job. So I took that job and I worked for them for maybe 5 years. And then I was at a grocery store one day and I hear my name being called. And I'm looking around and lo and behold, it's Dr. Pugley's. I don't know if you know him, but he's from Wernersville. And I grew up with him. And he became a doctor. And he says, Lou, what are you doing? I said, well, I work for Dr. Bear and Dr. White at the orthodontic lab. He said, I got a better job for you. I said, well, what? He said, you run my medical department at Berks County Prison. I said, oh, I said, I've been away from about 5 years. I don't know if I could still do it. He said, don't worry about it. I'll be with you every day. I said, okay. So a day or so later, I went up for an interview because I was off every Wednesday. So that Wednesday, I went with the doctor up to the prison, talked to the warden. He asked me a lot of questions, and he said, if you want the job, it's yours. I said, I'll take the job. So then I told Dr. Bear and Dr. White I was kind of leaving them and I was going to work for Dr. Pugley's. So I went up there and I worked in maybe 3 years with Dr. Pugley's, running the medical department. And I had a lot of military experience because I went to hospital corps school. I knew how to suture people up. I knew how to fill it. Because the guy that was there before, he was also in the Navy and he had all these military forms. And when I looked at that, I said, oh my God, it's just like being in the military. I said, this guy, yeah, but Dr. Pugley said, yeah, he was in the Navy and he retired. I said, well, this is great. I know all these forms, so there'll be no problem for me filling out these forms. So I worked up there at the prison for about 3 years. Then I said to Dr. Pugley, I said, you know, I have the pretty good training. I said, and you have to be with me most of the times. And when I run into a problem, I have to keep calling you. I said, I heard about this program the government had that if you went to Hershey Medical School, you could become a physician assistant. I said, how about I apply for that? He said, well, let's talk to the prison board. So I talked to the prison board, and I told him it's a 18-month program. I said, but I could be at school during the week, and in the weekend I could be at the prison and work. And they said, do you think you could do that? I said, well, I can give it a try. They said, okay, we'll authorize you going to school. We'll pay your salary, and they'll pay for the school. I said, well, you don't have to. Uncle Sam is going to pay for the school. So for 18 months, I was up at Hershey, and the weekends I'd be back at the prison. Back to Hershey for the week, weekends back to the prison. So I did that for 18 months and then finally graduated. Then I ran the whole medical department. And then after a bit, I said to the prison board, I said, I'm running the medical, I'm by myself. I said, I run 8 hours, I come in early in the morning. I said, I'm working maybe 9, 10 hours a day. I said, at nighttime, nobody's here. They have to call me. I have to come in and treat people. I said, can I hire some nurses? They said, well, what would it require? I said, I don't know. I said, I'll just put a letter out and see if I can get some nurses. So 3 nurses applied. And I talked to them. I said, how would you like working here at the prison? They said, oh, we'd love it. I said, okay. I said, I need one nurse to work with the women and 2 nurses to work with me and with the men. And I had 3 nurses. And then I went to prison board and I told them, I have 3 nurses that are willing to work at the prison. Will you hire them? They said, if you want them, hire them. So I called the nurses and I told them, if you want the job, it's yours. The next day they reported for work. So I had myself and 3 nurses that worked the whole prison. So one of them worked with the women and 2 of them worked with me. And then the one girl said, how about I work the night shift? I said, that'd be fine. I said, that way it would give me myself and one nurse at the night shift, right, and one gal over with the female. And I thought that was a pretty good suggestion. I said, yeah, let's do it like that. So I went to the prison board, I told them what I was going to do. And they said, okay, that's great. And that's what I did for 18 years. And then I finally retired. And now I'm enjoying life like you're supposed to.
Right. How long were you in the Merchant Marines?
I went in the Merchant Marine in 1944, and I stayed until the end of the war.
Okay.
And then after that was over, then I joined the military.
So after the war was over, you joined the Navy?
Yeah,
okay.
And then I joined the Navy. I stayed in the Navy for 20 years. And I worked in the same capacity as I did in the medical department, and it was fantastic. And then they had a split. They split the medical and the dental department. And I saw that the dental department was much easier than the medical department. They didn't work as hard the way it seemed.
Right.
I said, I'd like to stay in the dental department if it's okay. And the commander said, okay, yeah, we're dividing. If you want to go dental, you can. So I went to the dental department. And then I finally was able to go to a prosthetic school to learn how to make dentures and partials and stuff like that.
What were your duties when you were in the Merchant Marines?
In the Merchant Marine, I was in the engine department. I was a wiper, and my job was to keep the engines running. Any moving part, I had to keep greasing. And if there's any erosion or anything like that, I'd talk to the chief engineer. Him and I would take it apart, put new pieces together, re-oil it, and keep the engine going. And that's what I did. We kept that engine room so clean you could have eaten off the engines. I was really proud working on that part. I was only a young kid, and I thought, boy, this is the best life I ever had.
Yeah. So when did your parents find out that you had joined? Were you already deployed?
Yeah. I was in Panama on the way to go to Pacific.
And that's when you told them?
And that's when I told them. I wrote them a letter. I said, don't worry about me. And then, of course, there was nothing they could do about it at that particular point. So my parents there were 6 of us in during World War II then.
Six of your siblings?
Yeah. Well,
5 others?
Well, my brother Joe was at Pearl Harbor when they bombed. Then Mike and Sam went in, and then John went in, then Alfred went in, and then I went in. And there was in my family it was 9 boys, 2 girls, and over a period of time, all my brothers were in the military, including my dad.
During World War II?
Yeah. During World War II and Korea and Vietnam.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over that period of time.
Right. Tell us what you thought, what you felt when you heard about Pearl Harbor. Because your brother was there, right?
Yeah. The first thing I worried about was, was he killed or is he safe or what? For weeks we didn't know anything. And then finally we got a telegraph saying your brother Joseph Cinfici is safe.
Okay.
And then my mother was really relieved that Joe was okay.
Yeah. What did he do in the Navy?
Oh, he was in the Army.
He was in the Army?
Yeah, he was in infantry.
Okay.
Yeah, he was at Schofield Barracks.
Gotcha.
At Pearl Harbor.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Were there any scary moments when you're in the Merchant Marines?
Yeah. But you know, it's a funny thing. I would sometimes when I finished my duties, my 8 hours, or 4 on, 8 off. Yeah. After my 4 hours, I'd go to the kitchen, get a cup of coffee and a sandwich, close the curtain, get my eyes accustomed to the dark, open the hatch, and go out and sit in a fantail and eat a sandwich and drink a cup of coffee. And on some nights when the moon was really bright, you could look over the water and see that water. And I look over that water and I look up at the moon and I could see the silhouette of our ship. And I said, somewhere out there is a Japanese submarine just waiting to nail us. And I said to the guy upstairs, I said, if we get a torpedo, let me go with the torpedo because I don't want to go in the water. I said, those are the only scary moments that I really had.
Yeah.
I was concerned that if we got torpedoed, that I'd have to go into the water, and I didn't want that. I'd rather just get it over with because I didn't want to battle with sharks because they're all over the place.
Yeah.
So that was the only point that I was really afraid at that time.
Yeah.
But other than that, after a while, I just got so used to it that whatever happened, happens. It was a good life. So young, it was a great opportunity for me because I learned a lot. The older guys took me under the wings and taught me everything.
Right.
And I was getting a good education from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were your duties? Or I'm sorry, you already told me your duties.
Yeah.
What was the duty of the boat you were on? What kind of ship was it? Tugboat?
Our job was to tow barges loaded with different supplies to the islands. If there was, say, in the Midway, we had to drop off maybe one barge loaded with all kinds of food, all kinds of fuel, water, ammunition, you name it. These barges are huge. And we had to take them and push them into the cove and then tie them up as soon as they hit the land, tie them up, get back on our dinghy and go back to the ship. Okay. And there was two of us assigned to that job every day, every time we did that, Johnson and myself. We would ride the barge in. The captain would push the barge in, we would ride the barge in. And many times we were in there and you could see the Japanese. And I said to the captain a couple of times, I said, those Japanese are going to take those supplies. He said, there's nothing we can do. Yeah. The big shot said, drop the supplies off, and that's what we did. He said, I suspect that the Japs will take them. Yeah. He said, maybe not. Maybe our troops will be there in time to destroy the Japanese and get the supplies. Yeah. But all our job was to get them supplies in there and put them on these barges, and get these barges in these coves, and then it was up to our troops to get to these barges.
Okay. Were there any times where your ship was attacked, or?
Yeah, we were attacked a couple of times, but nothing really major. One time I was looking over the port side and I see 6 Japanese. You could see the big circle, big red circle, right. And I saw 6. I counted them, 6 of them, and I says, "Oh my God, we're going to get sunk." And they took a big curve. Now we only had 2 twin 50 caliber machine guns on there, and we had 2 army gunners. I was the loader for the 50 caliber machine guns, so I'm up on deck, and these planes come down, and then all of a sudden you don't see them anymore. They were maybe 2 feet, maybe 3 feet off the water. Our guns couldn't go down, and then all of a sudden you'd see them coming up, and then strafing, and off they go. So fast you couldn't even shoot them. And the one gunner on this port, on the port side, couldn't hit them because they'd come up off the water, and he could fire. But the guy on the starboard side, he could do it. He could fire at them, but we never got any of them. Yeah. They were so fast. Those Zeros were, man, amazing airplane. Holy mackerel! I said, I've never seen anything so fast. And they said that's only paper and wood. I said the pilot doesn't care whether he gets down or not. His job was to destroy the ship. Right. But they didn't destroy us. They strafed us and off they went. Yeah. But that's the only incident we really had. Other than we knew there were submarines around. But most of the times, I think when they looked at us, even the captain said something. When they looked at us, they thought, why waste a torpedo on that little bitty old ship? And that's what we thought That's what I was thinking too. Yeah. And I think, why would they waste a torpedo on us? We're only a little bitty ship. But not realizing that we were towing viable supplies.
Yeah.
Had they put us out of commission, those supplies would never get to the islands the troops needed. So the Japs really left us alone.
Yeah.
We were lucky. They were there, they were in the water, but they didn't bug. They didn't bug us. They went after the big guys.
Yeah. What were your living conditions like?
Very good, very good. I had a very comfortable bunk, a nice locker for my gear. The food was fantastic. We had fresh fruits and vegetables all the time. Every time we were in a particular area that we get up next to a Liberty ship, we bring supplies aboard, and it was all this fresh stuff. Oh boy, sometimes they bring us a sack of potatoes. You grab a potato, eat it raw. But we lived good. It was very good. Yeah, could never complain about the food. But I heard that the GIs were eating sea rations and stuff. I said, oh boy, too bad they're not on our ship.
Right.
But we did go to an island, the Fiji Islands, one time, and we were tied up. We went in and dropped the anchor, and a whole bunch of the GIs were on boats coming over to our ship. And they were yelling, hey, do you have any potatoes? Well, it was right there in the fantail of the ship. I had a whole sack of potatoes. And I said, yeah, we got potatoes. He said, can we have a couple? Yeah, and I'm throwing these potatoes to them. And then the captain come back in the fantail. He said, Luigi, what are you doing? I said, I'm throwing them some potatoes. They're yelling they would like to have some fresh potatoes. He said, stop that. So I had to stop. And then later on he told me, he said, you don't do that. He says, all you're doing is create a problem for them. Because now another ship will come in there, they want something fresh, they won't get it. And it's just not right. He said, don't ever do that again. I said, it's her. I could understand the point.
Were you ever in the Philippines?
Yes. We hit the Philippines. We were down in Luzon, and I was able to go ashore. See, I was looking for my brother also, and I heard he was in the Philippines. And I went I asked the captain, can I go ashore? He said, yeah, be careful, but make sure you don't stay too long. You get back to the ship. I said, yes, sir. So I got into Luzon, and I was asking some of the GIs there what division was there. My brother was in 135th. And they said, oh yeah, that division is way out there in the mountains of the Philippines. I said, how far is it? They said, it's too far for you to go, buddy. I said, okay. So then they had a book there. And I looked at this book, and I saw all these names in the book. I said, can I sign that book? Said, yeah, so I signed the book too. Hoping that if my brother would come back in that particular area, he would see the book and see my name, and know I was there looking for him. So then I went back to the ship, and then we proceeded our trips to deliver supplies to the other islands till the war ended. And once the war ended, that was it. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you describe what you were thinking when you watched the Japanese signing
when I saw them sign it, it was a funny feeling. I knew there was something important going on, but I didn't really realize what it was. And when I got down off the mast, I said to the captain, they're up there signing papers, and I could see MacArthur. And he says, they're signing the peace treaty. The war's over, Luigi. I said, oh. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah, it's all done.
Wow.
I said, that's great. So that was that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever keep in touch, or did you ever keep in touch with any of you guys?
No, I wish I would have. You know, when you're my age, all I was thinking, maybe get ashore, have a girl and a glass of beer.
Yeah.
Never thinking about keeping a record of things or taking photographs or any of that. Had I had a camera, I could have gotten some fantastic photographs. Even when I was in the Philippines, MacArthur, he was on land. He was on a Jeep, and they took him out into the pier. He got off the Jeep, jumped in the water, and it was coming ashore. Now there are all kinds of cameras taking pictures of that. Right. Now I'm on land also watching this, and I'm saying to myself, why is he doing that? And somebody said to me, it's a publicity shot. I said, oh, no kidding. So then when he got in, I went up to him, I says, shook his hand. I said, General MacArthur, it's a pleasure to meet you. And of course, I was nothing to him, you know.
So you shook MacArthur's hand?
Yeah, but he was more important. He had more important things to think about rather than me.
Right.
I would have liked to gotten to talk to him a little more, but I was just a small pebble in the water for him.
How did the people, when you were in Japan, how did those people treat you? Were they nice to you?
Oh my God, they were so nice, I couldn't believe it. When we were allowed to go ashore, they bowed to us, we bowed to them. But MacArthur told us, don't wear your shoes in their houses.
Right.
Yeah, we understood that was part of their custom. But they were so nice to us. But they did say, be careful, there might be a couple of groups of guys that still are resentful, that they might jump you. Don't go by yourself. Always stay in a group of 2 and 3. Yeah. He said, otherwise these little gangs will go after you. Yeah. And that's what we did. We stayed in 2 or 3 people. But the Japanese most of the people were really nice. I couldn't believe it. And their homes were fantastic. All clean. You don't wear shoes in there. Everything. You could eat off the floor, sleep on the floor.
Do you ever regret not marrying that girl?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Well, no. No, I can't say that. I have a nice wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But right afterwards, when you came home, did you think, man, maybe I should have...
Well, at first I was thinking about it. Maybe I should have married a girl and stayed in Japan. Yeah. But I'm so happy I didn't. Yeah. But I had an opportunity to marry a Filipino girl, too.
Okay.
Because I was stationed in the Philippines, and I ran around with a Filipino family, and I had this girl I ran around with. They wanted me, boy, they were practically forcing me into marrying her.
Wow.
I said, well, I said, I don't want to marry him. I saw all them nice girls back in the United States.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happened to me when I was stationed at Port Lyote. I ran around with a French girl, and she wanted to get married, come back to the States with me. And I said, oh, I said, too many American girls. So then I knocked on went to her house, and I told her I want to break it up. I said, I'm going back to the States.
You're a pretty popular guy.
Well, I was young, and they said I was a good-looking guy then. and it was nice. It was really, it was quite an experience for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think that your wartime experience has affected your life? How did it shape who you became?
I think it was quite an experience, but the only bad thing coming out of sometimes I have weird dreams, and I wake up at nighttime, especially when I left Vietnam. At nighttime when I wake up, I'm in a cold sweat and I'm shaking, and I'm saying to myself, well, what would have happened if I would have thought my wife was an enemy and grabbed her and done something bad? So I still go to the VA. So I went to the VA and I told them what my thoughts were. So they put me on medication. So I was on medication maybe 5 years, and then finally they tapered me off of it. And I still go to the psychiatrist because I still have those thoughts. Sometimes I'm sleeping and all of a sudden I think I'm at war. I can't watch war pictures. I can't, if it's on the TV, I can't watch them. It just brings me right back to them. I'm in a different world. And I said to the psychiatrist, I says, it's very strange. It's all these years, you would think that would be out of my mind. She said, no.
Never.
She said, you're going to keep that forever. I said, it's horrible. I said, I get these horrible dreams of nights. I said, I worry that I'm going to hurt somebody. I said, no, you won't hurt anybody. I said, you're sure? Yeah. You'll be all right. You'll wake up and realize where you're at. I said, but sometimes I wake up, I said, I'm in a cold sweat, and I think I'm there, and I'm looking around in the dark room. I said, I don't really know where I'm at. I said, my wife is next to me. I said, is she the enemy or do I go after her or what? They said, no, you'll be all right. I said, well, if you guys think so, I'll be all right.
Yeah.
But I still go to them.
Yeah.
In fact, I have next week I have an appointment to talk to a psychiatrist. But it's a funny thing, I said, all these years, I said, you would think that it would come off, get it out of my mind.
Right.
They say, you've been through a hell of a lot. Said you were 16 years old and you were fighting the Japanese, then you were in Vietnam.
So you went to Vietnam as well?
Yeah.
What did you do in Vietnam? This was in the Navy, obviously.
Yeah, I was in the medical department,
Okay.
medical and dental department.
Okay.
And when I was out in the boondocks, I had to treat, wherever our troops were, I would be there. And if they got shot up, I had to patch them up. But I patched more of the enemy up than I did our own troops. Because they didn't know who they were. I thought they were regular Vietnamese people. Find out I'm treating the enemy.
Wow.
They say, you're going to do that. Don't worry about it. I was okay.
And this was actually
So I
in
did that for
Vietnam.
13 months.
In Vietnam?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I come home and then they start calling me all kinds of names. I couldn't even go to a bar
Wow.
because they called me a name. And I said to my buddy, I said, if I go to this bar and that bartender says one word to me, I said, I'm going to jump over there, I'm going to kill him. He said, no. So we didn't go. Yeah. It was a horrible period. It took me weeks.
What year were you in Vietnam?
I went there early 65.
65.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were just having a lot of skirmishes, especially up north.
Yeah.
And that's where they put me, up north. I went to the hospital, then the hospital shipped me up north. Then I would stay up there for a couple of weeks, then back down to the hospital. Boy, it was lovely. Yeah. Hospital had a nice bed, they had good food, and nothing to worry about because we were surrounded by, I think Marines were on one side, an Army unit was on another side. We had a big fence surrounding the hospital, and it was safe. It was safe. You could sleep, you go to sleep, not worry about a thing.
Right.
And then, but of course, the showers were open, so when you took a shower, you had to worry that if there was a sniper out there in the boondocks, they could take a shot at you.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was nothing. It was a safe haven. But I was such a young guy. I sometimes sit at home and I wonder, holy mackerel, I wonder who else is going through things like this. And and when I'm at the VA hospital, I look some at the old timers and I think, wonder if he's having the same problems I am. But I don't get to talk to him. In fact, my life wasn't very a social life as it is now, only because I met Tyler. I don't know if you know Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of got me out of my shell.
Right.
He called me one day and we started talking, and he introduced me to other people. We got together with, I think, 5 or 6 other veterans. We went to his home, had a little outing on his patio. We got to talking, and his parents were such a nice couple. It was just fantastic.
Yeah.
And I started getting to a point where I got that chip off of my shoulder.
Yeah.
And now it's really great. But I still think about it.
I imagine you always will.
Yeah, that's what the doctor said. You'll never forget it.
Yeah.
I said, well, give me some medicine. So he said, it's not going to help you.
Yeah. Let me ask you one more question. What advice would you give someone who might see this interview in 50 or 100 years when you and I are both gone? What would you like them to know?
I think I would like them to know that all the people that were in my predicament, there was hundreds of us, that we tried to make the world safe. And we would have given our lives to make the world safe. And if that's all if they would say that, well, we appreciate what they did to make me survive as to what I'm doing right now, I think that's what I would hope for. That they wouldn't criticize the fact that what we did was bad. Although you're probably going to get that from a lot of people anyway. But I want them to remember that we tried to do our best to make society a safe place for everyone, especially for our kids growing up today.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of the Americans in Wartime Experience, I want you to know that we do appreciate you. We appreciate your time today, and we thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
Over 2 wars.
Yeah. Well, Vietnam, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, 3 of them.
You're in Korea too?
Yeah.
We didn't even get to Korea.
Yeah. Well, I was on the ship then,
Yeah. Okay.
and we patrolled Korea.
Gotcha.
And we had VMF 214 aboard our ship. We'd get as close as we could to the land, and the pilots would take off and bomb the daylights out of them, come back, reload, go back again, then we'd go back to Japan and resupply, and then back to Vietnam and Korea. And it was VMF 214, a good Marine fighter squadron.
Okay.
They deserve a lot of credit for what they did. But I think the military was great for me. If I wouldn't have gone into the military, I would have probably been a gangster. And I might have been in jail today.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Because I got into the numbers when I was a kid. Because they used me, because the police wouldn't touch us kids, but we'd go around and collect the money.
Yeah.
And turn it over to them. They'd give us a couple of bucks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
But
again, sir, thank you for sitting down and talking to us. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. And again, thank you for your service.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
3 wars.
Yeah.